Women who had held all sorts of jobs during the war were expected to return to more conventional roles as housewives or secretaries or adornments on a glamorous pedestal. The mainstream, that was the place to be.
Prior to the 1900s, society considered women incapable of maintaining a professional demeanor in a working environment. In 1919, women who applied for engineering majors faced harsh and degrading rejections and were informed that the schools do not expect to have in the near future any woman registered in the engineering department. Before the start of the Second World War, companies refused to hire women because people perceived them as lacking the physical strength, mechanical ability, and emotional stability to do skillful, high-paying jobs. Employers feared that women would be hindrances to men and provide an unnecessary distraction in the workplace. However, vacant positions in imperative mechanical and engineering fields prevented those overseas from receiving the resources they needed. As a result, the Boeing company turned to women. With the war at its end, Boeing released all women from their positions as mechanical engineers, forcing them to return to their previous homemaking and secretarial employments. In unwavering force, the women stood their ground and relentlessly fought against this tragedy until society begrudgingly embraced the concept of gender equality. These determined women triumphed in establishing a welcoming environment for future women in all fields. Aiming to aid the war effort, women preceded by female seamstresses, administrators, and stewardesses transferred from their domestic employments to work in the Boeing shipyards and factories and became known as the Rosies. Drawn by the recruitment posters that claimed that river work was easy, just like putting a pattern on fabric to make a dress, millions of women began their work as airplane engineers. Making up 50% of the workforce, women boosted the production of B-17 and B-29 bombers to 108 per week. Despite the sudden change in female involvement, these women demonstrated quick and effective production, and they often proved themselves to be more efficient than their male predecessors. By riveting 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, Boeing generously gave working mothers convenient daycare locations and flexible hours.
When she was young, it was a challenge for sure. I think it's important to be flexible. Some things at certain points in my career and in her, as she was growing up, we had to, make modifications as to what was important and what to prioritize. I think that's the thing that helped me the most was not to beat myself up if I couldn't do everything that I wanted to do, realizing that I needed to prioritize and you can't get it. There are only so many hours in a day.
On August 15, 1945, President Harry Truman announced the end of the Second World War, and the country rejoiced, reveling in their triumph. However, the victory was short-lived as the government revealed their initial agenda, firing all the female engineers and forcing the indignant women to return to their previous domestic employments. Several company managers justified this unwarranted treatment by claiming that the production process had altered so completely after the war that the occupations where women had proved themselves no longer existed.
I had one professor, and you see most of this in that article, it's in the paper, that didn't want me in his class at all. And he wouldn't get away with it now, but I said, well, I need the course. And he said, well, you can take it. I'm only going to pass you with a C. And I took the course, and he only passed me with a C.
The women were astounded by the undeserved behavior they received and powerless against the company's orders as they unwillingly complied to these appalling commands. Studies showed that 75 to 80% of the women engineers had planned on keeping their mechanical jobs post-war but couldn't, forced to either face relegation or become unemployed in the wake of the country's biggest triumph. Struggling to readjust, the aggrieved women found their dreary jobs difficult to return to, compared to the constant synergy of engineering and mechanics. A original Rosie, Eleanor Otto, said that she turned to a series of jobs that were unsatisfactory, especially the ones that had her sitting in an office. During the war, women had proudly accounted for 12% of factory workers and engineers. By the war's end, they made up less than 1%. The apparent unease throughout society from both well-wishers and misogynists put the community on edge. This unjust tragedy provoked many people to revolt against the appalling treatment that the hardworking women had received after the war. Several women's rights activists spearheaded a movement to urge companies to rehire the women they unethically released. The most prominent group of protesters, the Women's Advisory Committee, fought long after many others had lost faith. They argued that the government can't treat women as a reserve group only to be used in times of desperate need. Exploiting the local media, the WAC took the quiet protests to the public, overtly pressurizing the government to convince major companies to rehire the released women. Although the determined propagandists triumphed in making their voices heard, they also caught the attention of a much bigger threat. The government employed the War Manpower Commission to counter the WAC's protest. In addition, propagandists declared women unfit for management positions, claiming they lack imperative masculine traits normally found in high-ranking positions. They swiftly addressed the problems at hand, imploring society to accept their policies against gender equality. Through the release of several waves of propaganda, the organization slowly tore apart the WAC's arguments, sending their progress back months. The propaganda claimed that the working woman would repel men and never wed or bear children. They explained that the only way to repent for their ambitious actions was to become a devoted housewife. In addition, propagandists declared women unfit for management positions, claiming they lack imperative masculine traits normally found in high-ranking positions. These characteristics included aggressiveness, independence, dominance, and self-reliance, qualities generally found in men. They also pointed out that women would ultimately leave their jobs to fulfill maternal needs, and that monthly cycles would be an interference to the stability and consistency of a workplace. While the women's rights advocates couldn't dispute the difficulties of motherhood, they expertly deflected other opposing statements. They expressed the fact that women exemplified other pertinent characteristics desirable in strong leaders. This included the ability to empathetically connect with others, to provide an open work environment. Although the WMC did their best to appeal to others, the WAC triumphed in establishing an equal place for women in society. The discrimination and retaliation they initially received drove the unrelenting women to utilize every aspect of publicity they could, using the media to conjure a large support system that is still in place today. Today, the gender bias against women is nearly gone, and new establishments of gender equality replace old traditions of male dominance. Women who began as unnoticed Rosies were promoted into previously barred management positions, laying the foundation that women are capable of anything. To commemorate their triumphs during and after the war, the government passed the Promoting Women in Entrepreneurship Act in 2017, urging businesses to support women in these employment positions. And in the following year, the government passed the Rosie the Riveter Congressional Medal Act to commemorate the Rosie's diligence during the war. A plaque that resides at the Rosie the Riveter National Park bears these words: "You must tell your children, putting modesty aside, that without us, without women, there would have been no spring in 1945. Thanks to the relentless determination of the female engineers, women now have the freedom to choose their desired jobs, free of prior employment restrictions. By urging society to stray from their traditional perspectives, unyielding female advocates establish equal rights in education, career options, and business strengths for both genders. Although society will never reach complete perfection, the endeavors of resolute women during the 20th century leave a lasting impression on the world today."